We are honored to have Mr. Clement Kalonga with us today to guide us through this discussion. Clement is an expert in sustainable development with a focus on climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, or DRR for short, and humanitarian affairs. He spent a number of years as the regional DRR and resilience focal person for the SADC DRR unit. And during his time in that role, he interacted closely with DRR managers in the SADC countries, as he supported their capacity development efforts in governance and financing for DRR, as well as disaster risk response. Clement's interactions with the SADC countries have often occurred during some of the extreme weather-related disasters that have recently affected us in the SADC region. And Clement understands well the interface between climate and DRR, as he has interacted with climate scientists in several fora, including SACOF, which CSC organizes every year. Clement is currently with WFP, where he continues to work passionately on DRR-related issues as he manages the SADC RVAA, or Regional Vulnerability Assessment and Analysis Program. Colleagues, please help me welcome Mr. Clement Kalonga as he tells us what information the DRR agencies need to know from the climate community in order to better prepare for extreme precipitation and potential flooding. Clement, over to you now.
Thank you, Tapuka. And thank you, Chris and Dr. Farker, for your excellent presentations. Colleagues, I did not prepare slides for a presentation, but building on what my two colleagues have clearly articulated, I want to bring home a few perspectives from someone who's been on the field responding to floods and responding to earthquakes, and worked in a role supporting member states as they respond to these emergencies. And I want to start off by appreciating the fact that conceptually things are evolving. We are predominantly coming from a perspective where we're doing disaster response and disaster management, and now we're in an era where we're talking about disaster risk management. And I think the relationship between early warning and disaster risk management, has to start recognizing the evolution of the conceptual understanding of these things. Ideally, where we are now with the Sendai framework providing the basis for our disaster risk management is that we want to manage the risk of disasters and not really be involved in the actual disasters, the actual disaster response itself. Now, if good DRR happens, we should have less and less impact, in terms of loss of life and livelihood. And that's the ambition. And imply, and it's a very ambitious target to really work within the risk dimension of the cycle of disaster management. And it is this particular area of DRR where now early warning becomes so crucial, because you cannot prevent the impact of hazards, or you cannot reduce their impact, or you cannot manage this risk without having information clearly about what's going to be happening when and where. And this is where disaster risk managers are struggling to really get their heads around. And the cases we've seen with the cyclones and the floods that affected the region and affect the region year in and year out is really about what sort of information comes through and how is that information utilized, and the issue of timing. At what point does this information get to the right people, including getting to the households and the communities that are going to be affected? And time plays a very crucial role, because if this information, I think as Dr. Farker tried to explain, that they've tried now, and they're keeping improving to even give people a warning within a week. But who gets that information? And at what point does that information get to the household that has to take action? Now, to try and explain these things, so I'll start off by saying conceptually, we're looking at managing risk, and managing risk is critical than responding to disasters, than going to a situation that we're doing now in Beira, where a lot of property has been destroyed. We have lost a lot of lives in Zimbabwe. We've lost a lot of lives in Malawi. This is not desirable. So it actually, presents a situation where I think there are some gaps and failures within the systems of early warning and the systems of disaster risk management in the region. Now, when we extend the conceptual application to early warning, what I've noted is that I think there's not a complete and shared understanding across the communities, especially the different stakeholders around what constitutes good quality early warning. And as I said in my summarized abstract, that the relationship between early warning and disaster risk management is that of garbage in and garbage out. So if you have good early warning and good DRR arrangements or system in a country, then you expect to have an outcome which is positive, or an outcome which has good impact in terms of the ability to provide hazard information and warning in a way and in a timely manner that reduces the impact of whatever hazard. It might be a cyclone that turns into precipitation that turns into flooding, or whatever hazards that there might be. So I think our colleagues from the climate services point of view, or climatologists, are trying to provide this information. But I think to some extent it's still seen as kind of an isolated role of climatologists to provide early warning. And so my first argument is to say that early warning's perspective and practice as it stands now leaves a lot to be desired, in that it has been an issue that we have left for climatologists to deal with. And so later on, we in the DRR or the other stakeholders get to try and interpret and try to make sense of what the early warning is trying to say. Ideally, we should look at early warning as an input, a key and crucial input into the disaster risk management system. And in that, while disaster risk managers or maybe municipal authorities or policymakers may not have the capability or the expertise to generate the initial hazard warning, but we should have an interest, and we should be stakeholders in the process, so that there's a committed process to receive hazard information, process it, and improve the dissemination and follow through in terms of monitoring and getting to a point where decisions about actions at different levels of governments and different levels in the community should be taken. We shouldn't look at early warning as that sort of information that climatologists will put out, and then people should figure out what happens. But it should be an integrated system where, as early warning information is being developed, and you notice for all these cyclones that the hazard information develops over time and it changes, and the changes that happen have significant impact on the communities. I think Dr. Faka ably presented the changes that happened with Cyclone Idai, that initially it was projected to land in a different place, and then there were different things that happened. And so the monitoring aspect of what the dynamics of the hazard as it emerges is key for disaster risk managers and other key stakeholders to be part and parcel of that process, so that they then disseminate adequate information that helps people and communities and decision makers at different levels to start making sense out of this information. Now, so on one hand is improvement of the early warning information, in that our colleagues climatologists are doing their part, but I think we need a sort of integrated system where there is a lot of interaction as information emerges, so that we add value, the other stakeholders add value. I'll give you an example of the cases that happened in Zimbabwe, in Chimanimani. So part of the communities that was washed out there, I think, was living in an area which is in a mountainous area, and there were sort of landslides that sort of happened, and there were lots of households that were washed out into the river system. Now, hydrologists and maybe geologists would have played a much more important role in the process of processing this information from an initial hazard warning information to something that is more defined and more pronounced early warning, because they would have added to the projection of an incoming cyclone and the fact that there's incoming higher precipitation than normal. They would add to that the geological conditions of the areas that are in the path of the cyclone. And also the hydrologists would talk to you about the existing river flows and and the current hydrological situation in the area, attributing to previous rainfall events that have been happening in the area. So you find that the cyclone warning in itself does not constitute adequate early warning information for people to make decisions. But when you add to it, the roles and the expertise of other stakeholders, geologists, social community development people, planners that understand the areas that are, in the path of the cyclone and what will happen, then you find that you get to a point where decisions could be undertaken either by government at local level, at provincial level, at a national level. But more importantly, then more plausible information can be extended to the households at risk so that they understand what action they need to take. So I think there's that gap that we need to address in terms of improving the early warning information, and by allowing the contributions of other stakeholders, and much more importantly, instead of disseminating raw early warning hazard, but processing it and analyzing it and monitoring it, and so that it is added value, so that there's quality early warning information. And then I'll move on to my next point. My next point is about early warning information would only make sense and it will only be utilized or add value to save lives and livelihoods and build resilience of communities when there is existing disaster risk reduction systems. Now, why I'm saying that is that most communities where they've gone through an understanding of what hazards are, they've mapped hazard areas in their community, they understand the concept of vulnerability, they understand the concept of preparedness and response, they have marked evacuation areas in their community, they know exactly what to do, they've done drills and simulations. When early warning information comes through to such a community, they know exactly what to do. They know, okay, if it's floods and these are the flooded areas of the community, these are the high areas where we should be. These are the shelters that have been designated to be shelters for evacuation. You see. So, but for a community that has never gone through a conceptualization of what sort of hazards would interact with them and what sort of impact would it be, what sort of vulnerabilities are they exposed to, and what sort of preparedness mechanisms should they put in place, is a, not even knowing about evacuation, or how to evacuate, where to evacuate to. For such a community, even if you provide high quality early warning information, it will be impossible to save them. It will be impossible to help them because they don't understand it. For the first time, they're hearing a cyclone is coming, and they can't imagine what it means in practice. They can't imagine what sort of interaction, if this makes landfall, what is going to happen to us? What should we do? So much of what has gone into being described as a lost opportunity for the impact of early warning has been much, in most senses, in most cases, attributed to the fact that the community has been told this information, is hearing for the first time that you should evacuate, and the question is where, how? So I know of households, and I've heard the stories from Mozambique and from Zimbabwe, of households that just went in their house. They didn't even know whether their house is situated in a place where if it floods, they would be affected. They just went in and closed in to say, look, there's a cyclone. The safety point is for us to be inside the house. And then as the water rose, most of them, they were swallowed out. And some of them, they were in the way of the water and they were swept out. So I think effective early warning is largely dependent also of effective disaster risk management systems. And in this case, I'm emphasizing community-based disaster risk management, where communities are given the opportunity to understand these concepts and to do a little bit of introspection as a household to say, my understanding of if it floods, these are the areas. So the communities can demarcate areas that they know that if there's a flood of this level, these are the households that will be affected. This is where we can evacuate to. Is this school safe? Or maybe there's a structure where they are now sure that we will be there, So they know that when they say evacuate, this is the path for us to evacuate. And we're going to that point, and it can take so many households and we'll be safe there. So, at this point, I would say working in disaster risk management for years and working with the SADC disaster risk management units in the countries, you find that the coverage of community-based disaster risk management systems is very, very limited. Quite a few communities where there have been interventions of NGOs or some governments that have managed to reach out and to set these systems in place at least they are aware and they know what it means. But for a majority of our communities, and that is why, when the increased impact of climate change means that more and more communities that have not been typically affected by floods and most of these natural hazards are getting affected. And most of our disaster risk management systems and awareness raising and support had targeted priority areas, which, like when I worked in Malawi, they would say these are, typical flooding districts of Malawi, and they would target certain communities only because the resources are very few. But now it seems all communities need to know clearly how they should be able to do it. So I will attribute the second issue to weak disaster risk management systems that have to be addressed as that's the only way warning information will be able to make sense. Now I'll summarize my talk also to talk about, aspects that I think should also be improved, in the way we handle most of these issues. I think the issue of human behavior, humans, if you look at human behavior, not even in the field of disaster management only, they have a tendency of doing things that they're used to do, and this is one thing that I struggled, to understand why we need to do disaster simulations, because sometimes to justify that initially, when I started working in disaster management, I started thinking, is this really necessary? But human behavior is in a way such that if you have tried to do a thing, the first time you try to do it, you don't do it perfectly. But it's like driving, the first time you step into a car to drive it, it looks strange. And then 10 years of driving, it's just normal. So I think this is a missing link that most of our communities have not been given a scenario-based simulation, and we've not helped. Okay, yeah. Now I wanted to talk about that, simulating hazards and response capabilities of different communities is a key thing, because it's when we improve human behavior in terms of understanding how to use early warning and how to respond to it, how to prepare to the hazard, to possible hazards, and how to respond. And we need to help communities to stimulate this, to do drills, so that it becomes part of their behavior. And in that case, you'll see that there will be reduced number of deaths and reduced losses in terms of livelihood, because it will become natural. There are communities that have now gotten to that point where they know these are, like our colleagues in South Asia, they know these are the typhoon period. They know that this is what we expect. If there's an alarm sounded in the community, this is naturally, they know where they're going to be running to. And this is a bit of behavioral improvements that we need to bring to our people as we move forward. Now, my last key messages is just to talk about things that I think could be improved. Firstly, I think, as I said, early warning should be considered not as an end, but an input into a wider disaster risk management system. And so it calls for climatologists and us in DRR and policymakers to continue interaction. And I'm happy that the Study Climate Services Center has started the process. He talked about the disaster preparedness platform that comes after SAPOF. That sort of interaction is improving how we understand, the climatological processes and how they understand our disaster management processes. But I don't think it's adequate enough in the country level, and it's more inadequate when you go at subnational levels, where there's quite a disconnection, because most of the study countries do not have enough climatologists. So you have a broader early warning information, given at national level, which is not lacking. It's lacking a lot of clarity and specificity, and then combined with the lack of good DRR systems, then it really misses the point. So we need to improve the interactions of the experts in climatology and DRR, and also working together to improve early warning systems and improve the quality and monitor early warning information, how it's being utilized. The third point I want to talk about is review, and I think this is very important. And the Study Climate Services Center has started to do a review of their prediction and to get feedback. And I think this is a key process, because we need to learn from every event, how the generation of the early information system happened, to what extent the quality was improved, to what extent other stakeholders played a role, and identify gaps that should be improved in the next event. So we don't have to wait. And I like this webinar process because it's trying in a way to bring that reflection so that we can be able to improve and instill a culture of continuous improvement in these things, so that we need to draw lessons on how previous early warning information was generated, utilized, what sort of impact it produced, and what are the key lessons learned on future scenarios and how we can improve how this information is disseminated, this information is utilized, and how this information brings impact. And as I said, investment in DRR at community level is lacking. And until that investment is done to a level where, driven by the community itself, there has to be community awareness of hazards that could potentially affect them. The vulnerabilities that are existent among the households, different types of households, different individuals in the community, and how preparedness systems can be put in place prior to the cyclone coming in. The 1 week lean period is not enough to start putting in place preparedness and response mechanisms that are adequate to prevent significant losses of life. These systems have to be invested prior. Every community should think about, when there's a flood, what are we going to be doing? When there's higher precipitation, when there are landslides, what are we going to do? Who will do what? Those roles are not very defined as we speak now. And generally, I will talk about the investment in early warning systems. And I think Dr. Faka talked about the regional support that has been provided, and they're able to, at least provide some products for national. But you find that the customization of early warning information depends on how effective the national systems are. So I would still think that we don't have successful, not many of the successful case studies of local processes and national processes that are investing significantly in climatology infrastructure that would help to produce effective air warning. And I think that is a gap that should be addressed. So in a nutshell, I think disaster risk managers, they need early warning, but they don't need to consume early warning just like something that is being provided to them. They should be part and parcel. Good early warning system is a combination of what climatologists produces, but the input of disaster risk management and plus key experts. So they should not be, as the question was, to say, what are we looking for us to do our disaster risk management? We need to be part and parcel of this information generation, improving its quality, adding analysis to it related to different other expertise to get to a point where such information is communicated to the communities that are at risk, which have already in the past done investments in terms of evacuation centers, in terms of knowing which areas are going to be affected and knowing what sort of behavior then should be triggered in when such information is provided. And then we successfully, continuously do how we have behaved at national making. So I'll stop there, colleagues, and if there are any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kalonga. That has been a very good overview of how we need to better link up between the climate and the DRR sectors. Do you have any questions for Clement? I'm not seeing any questions. As you were going through this, and we kind of thought about everything that we've heard over the course of the afternoon, you reminded me of a proverb that I learned at school, that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Yeah. We've heard about data, improving data sets, improving forecasting, analyzing, and producing reports that are disseminated for early warning. But there's also a multi-sectoral approach that you mentioned. And perhaps one question that I have for you is, how do you think we can improve this multi-sectoral approach? Because I think this is one action item which the climatologists amongst us can really participate in terms of whose responsibility do you think, or who should take the initiative in trying to get better linkages between the climatologists and you talked about geologists and hydrologists as well as the DRR. What's your take on that, Clement?
Yeah, I would think we need to take advantage of existing platforms, and so I think most countries have committees at national level that are dealing with disaster management. They call them the National Disaster Committee, which is a platform for donors, a platform for NGOs and government. So I would think, instead of creating parallel structures, let's utilize existing structures. And I think this is a discussion I've had with a quite number of my disaster risk management experts in the region, that most of these have been more interested in response. So once the disaster has happened, they get more to do at the assessments and then make decisions about how much food is going to be distributed, how much tents. So we need to extend the sort of interaction we've started with the Climate Services Center, where when they're producing SACOF now, they have user experts, from different sectors with them, trying to understand how they will use this information and try to look at scenarios. If they're predicting that the region will have, above normal rainfall, what does it mean for each sector? So we need to build on that and build on the existence of the national disaster committees and the existence of NACOFs, which are, the National Climate Outlook forums in the countries, so that if there's an emerging activity, we can create task forces, at national level that could, as soon as there's an emerging, activity on the Indian Ocean about maybe an emerging cyclone activity, then we can activate some task forces in the countries that are concerned, and maybe one task force at the region. So there's an interaction between, among climate scientists and disaster risk managers and other sectoral leads at the secretariat level through the platform of SACOF. So we don't have to wait for, for once off in a year SACOF and then an update, but it has to be an active interaction that also gets activated during, the emergency of for example, cyclone activity. And similarly, the NACOFs normally they meet, after SACOF to disseminate the findings, and then they do an update once, and then that's it. So I think there's an existing platform and opportunity to use the SACOF and the NACOFs at the regional and national level respectively. But I think we need to create task forces, and I think Dr. Faka can speak to that, to say, since they're already existing and within the structure of the SACOF and NACOF, there are already these sectors that are involved. We need to have a task force of those sectors active during. So if they say that a cyclone is developing and potentially to affect Malawi, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, each of these three countries start looking at that at national level. And for the affected districts, they start also activating a process of trying now to interpret this process and then trying to question and examine their preparedness and response mechanisms. So let's build on these existing structures so that we don't duplicate efforts and create more committees, but we add value to existing ones. I'll respond that way. Thank you.